So you might have heard me tell this story before, and it's in regards to a historical event called the March of Grace. Now, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of this story. Essentially, Henry VIII is leaving the Roman Catholic Church, and the question of monasteries is in doubt, but monasteries played a big part of medieval life, especially in the north, and of course the north of England wanted to keep its monasteries, so they did a protest march. First one worked, and the king promised to have a look at in a way of how they could keep these monasteries, and that there would maybe be some sort of more compact. However, the fanatics started to take over, and the fanatics started to demand more and more and more, to the point of they wanted the king to essentially rejoin the Catholic Church. And of course what happened was Henry VIII said, right, enough's enough, and pretty much all the leaders, including the original leader of the first march, who was out and spoke out against the fanatics and their subsequent marches, saying that you are going too far, we achieved what we wanted, they all lost their heads, including that guy. And this is a good story because it just goes to show you can't really make fanatics happy, because even if you give them one thing, it's never truly enough. And this does flow into quite an almost victim narrative. And we're going to go over here one from the Byline Times. Let me just check. It is, yep, the Byline Times, and it is called The Paradox of Victimhood. And it just goes, well, I've just started to tell you that no matter what the form of Brexit, it's never going to be enough for them. So the most surprising future of Britain since Brexit referendum is now just how unhappy the Brexiteers have actually been. On the face of it, you would expect there to have been joy and jubilation, especially on the day that Britain actually left the EU. In fact, any celebration has been muted, if not non-existent. While Brexiteers seem to be angrier than ever, the latest fury expressed by Conservative MP Ian Duncan Smith is about the Brexit withdrawal agreement, even though he actually voted for it. It is a complex political psychology that has played out ever since the 2016s. The consequences of which are having a major impact on British political culture. But there is a danger, and it is due to the swirl of events and even the rapidity of which even the very recent history is being rewritten and being forgotten. Almost as soon as the EU referendum result was announced, Brexiteers such as Nigel Farage began to talk about their fear that it would be betrayed. Meanwhile, within the Conservative Party, a battle was underway to define, as the Vote Leave campaign had not, what Brexit actually meant. At the time, there was a propensity about the distinction between a soft and hard Brexit, the former denoted as the Norway model and the latter by a Canada model. In practice, it was about the difference between seeking to retain single market membership or not. But the key point to understand is that whichever concession was made to the hardcore Brexit ultras, aka the Conservative MPs in the European Research Group, the EGR, Nigel Farage and Brexit Party MEPs, committed activists within those parties and their many supporters in the media and various think tanks, they would always demand another. The numerous historical opt-outs they wanted, such as from Schengen and the Euro, were achieved but just led to new demands. As soon as David Cameron offered a referendum, they started agitating about the wording of the question and framing of the response and who should be able to vote in it. They even got their way on all those things, mainly to head off the possibility that if it was expected that they lost, they would cry foul. But there were bigger issues at stake. Until fairly recently, although not during the referendum campaign itself, Farage and UKIP were quite happy with the Norway model of Brexit. And during the campaign, many in Vote Leave said this was exactly what Brexit would mean. But as soon as they had won, this was not enough. Brexit, they now insisted, had to mean a hard Brexit, leaving the single market, but also any form of European Court of Justice jurisdiction, and negotiating free trade agreements with the EU, in other words, the Canada model. It was this that was a subject of the internal battle in the Conservative Party in the second half of 2016, during the period that Theresa May would only offer that Brexit means Brexit. It was not quite the meaningless slogan that it seemed it denoted, that Brexit would happen and that the referendum result would not be revisited. But her public utterances were ambiguous about whether that meant single market membership or not. That ambiguity ended particularly with her party conference speech in October of 2016, but definitively with her Lancaster House speech in January of 2017. Brexit now unequivocally meant hard Brexit, reportedly on the whim of her advisers rather by any wider discussion. Briefly, the ultras were placated, but very quickly they start demanding that a true Brexit meant no deal at all, and that anything else would be a betrayal. That demand intensified as pragmatic realities of a hard Brexit became clear, culminating in the Chequers proposal of July of 2018. Notably, in the same period, No Deal Brexit began to be renamed as Hard Brexit, with the use with what used to be a hard Brexit rebranded as a soft Brexit, and what used to be a soft Brexit dismissed as not being Brexit at all. Already been weakened by the ill-judged general election of 2017, May's withdrawal agreement limped on until her demise. By that point, the Ultras' principal demand was the removal of the Irish backstop from the agreement. This Boris Johnson has done, by reverting to the previous rejected means of an Irish sea border. This was the oven-ready deal on which he won the 2019 general election, with support of the ERG. He got this through Parliament and signed it with the EU. But now things have changed again. Hardly any ink had dried on what is now a binding international treaty. Then the Brexit ultras began to repudiate it. Suddenly, they discovered that despite having voted for it, it was a poison pill, which betrayed the Brexit referendum's vote for sovereignty. This can be now seen in how Ian Duncan Smith and others are currently mounting a concerted campaign against honouring the withdrawal agreement. At one level, there is an obvious pattern. Trying to give Brexiteers what they want in order to appease them proves to be pointless, because whatever they are given, they come back like blackmailers or protection racketeers with even more extortionate demands. But beneath that, there is something much stranger and far more dangerous. The Brexit movement was always one of campaign and complaint. Feeding on a sense of victimhood, it thrived on the idea of being the powerless silent majority, forbidden by the PC elite from saying what we really think. Given such a mindset, winning the referendum was an actual disaster for them, because from then on they were in charge and their policy has defined British politics. Ever since then, they have sought to regain the comfort zone of victimhood. Their driving force is not, as it might seem, the constant fear of betrayal, but the constant need and desire to be betrayed. Given that it would make no difference if Remainers got behind Brexit, for that is the last thing the Ultras actually want, and would not just lead them to saying that this is a Remainer Brexit, not a real Brexit. Indeed, when Theresa May did so, with a conviction that shocked Remain voters, they destroyed her for being Theresa the Remainer. Now that they have Boris Johnson, they are saying that he has struck a deal that isn't sovereignty compliant. Invariably, the Brexit ultras claim that they are already speaking for the 17.4 million people who voted to leave the EU in 2016. But this is nonsense. Not only was no definition of what Brexit would look like been put forward at that time, but they never had been a polling for majority for leaving the single market. Still less for exiting the various EU agencies and programmes that the ultras revile because they have some sort of lurking role for the European Court of Justice. But, bogus as it is that claims matter because it has an effect on creating an insoluble paradox, on the one hand, Brexit must be done because it is the will of the people. On the other hand, any form of Brexit that is a betrayal of the will of the people, that is the consequence of the Brexit ultras consistently asking for more, and at a profound level, their need for victimhood that comes from being given more. Since the referendum, an entire nation has been shackled to the political psychology of a relatively small number of people who, like rebellious teenagers, secretly wanting to be set boundaries, demanding total victory whilst craving defeat. It makes it impossible to turn Brexit into a workable policy because at the heart there is not a policy demand at all, but a demand to be thwarted. It is an old joke that the cruelest and saddest is one who refuses to inflict pain on a machinist. That joke is now being played out in the politics of Brexit Britain, and that thing is not very funny. And I completely agree. You did see that exact thing of the thing that was once, soft and hard Brexit. Soft Brexit then became the hard Brexit, and the hard Brexit was the true Brexit, and now the hard Brexit is the soft Brexit, and the true Brexit is to just ditch, the withdrawal agreement. It's never enough, and there is a constant need for betrayal. And as was said there, this has been a narrative that they have spun since the very beginning, since winning. You'd think these people would be more happy, but they're constantly the people who are most angriest about winning. Never have we seen such a group of people being so angry about winning something. And they are right. Brexit was not defined by the Leave campaign. If anything, we should be having another referendum to actually define what Brexit actually is. Because I tell you now, there is no polling majority, as was said there, for leaving the single market or the customs union, or even leaving some of those EU agencies. But, of course, we can't have another referendum because, the big, again, playing that victim narrative, the will of the people. Oh, well, that's a betrayal narrative, that. You've gone against the will of the people. How dare you? And you see how easy it is just to create a narrative just on that. Let's have a referendum to define what Brexit is, what people actually want, what they voted for. Oh, you can't do that. Can't do that. That's against the will of the people. See how easy it is. But, as always, thank you for watching. Please do like, share and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you all next time.